Hey guys, so today I'm going to recreate this level up animation right there. So I'm going to recreate this layout and I'm going to animate it. I'm saying that this is an animation, but it is not yet an animation and we are going to do it. So let's hop into Godot. I've already set up the scene and I'm already using a background for our scene. It's just a texture rect with a gradient 2D and I'm then using the values from the illustration. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is instantiate a new texture rect, and I'm going to rename that raise right away. And in here, I could actually grab it from here and place it right there. Okay, so keep size, no, I want fit with proportional, for example, and keep aspect centered. Okay, so it's going to keep the same aspect ratio, but it's going to be centered. Fit with proportional, is that really what I want? Yes. Okay. So now I can resize to whatever I want, and that is perfect. Let's use the anchor and let's put that in the middle. Maybe it can be a bit bigger depending on what you want. You decide. Make it. I hit Alt to Shift on both sides. And I make it roughly like that. We can always adjust. I'm going to make it higher though, because I want to have space for the buttons at the bottom. This should give us enough space, and we can always resize that if we want. We can actually duplicate that, I think, and I'm going to call it shield. It's not exactly a shield, but I don't know how to call it better. Put the shield inside here, and we have our nice shield. So the problem with that it's too big, so we can resize it to whatever we want. Again, hit Alt to Shift both sides. And for the placement, in here we have an easy solution. We could put the shield and make it a child of the ray. That way we could use the anchor presets, and we would be able to move stuff the way we want. The problem with that is later on, if we decide to animate, for example, I don't know, we decide to animate maybe the rotation of that, right? We change, of course, the pivot offset, but we make it rotate to appear, then this will be also rotated. So one way to do it is to just put all of those as siblings like that, or we could use, and maybe I should do that, I think it's a better way of doing it, we could use a pivot point or an anchor if you want. We can call it an anchor, place it wherever we want, and then make those child of the anchor. That way, the rays and the shield are still siblings, so the transforms of the rays are not going to be transferred to the shield, but we'll still have one easy way to move them wherever we want, because in the end, they are going to be placed on top of each other. So we can do that, actually. Take both of those and move them to be a child of the anchor. And now what we can use is we can anchor them to the center of the anchor this time. All right. So this makes sense. And now we can move the anchor, which again is anchored to the center. We can move that to wherever we want. So a bit higher, of course. This is going to look better. Okay, something like that. So now what is cool is you can change the scale of your things the way you want, and it's not going to affect the other. So this is super cool. Okay. Now I think we should also add another one, and it's going to be again, we can duplicate the shield this time. And I'm going to write wing. So it's one of the wing. I have it in here, wing. So the wings are probably not going to be animated before the shield, so I think we can safely make them as a child of the shield. But again, you can reuse the same system if you want to have a relationship in the placement, but you don't want to keep the transform. You can use another anchor if you want. In this case, I think it's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them a bit smaller. And we can maybe place them using that, right? We can place them using the using the anchor to the right, and then of course we still need to move it to wherever we want. So I'm looking on the side because I'm looking at the reference, okay? So what I can do is make that a bit smaller and align it to roughly here. Okay, and something like that maybe. What I will do then is in visibility, I make sure to click show behind parent. That way it's behind the parent. Okay, pretty cool. We have our first wing. We can hit a Control D to duplicate. Maybe I rename this one wing R and wing L. That way it's better. We can flip, so flip H to flip it in the other direction. And then what we'll do is we'll make sure to change the anchor, so we anchor it to the left. We should be able to reuse the transform. Position 403. Can we reuse that? Can we reuse that? 403. So maybe minus 403. No, it's going too far. So maybe I'm not able to reuse it. That's the problem. Sometimes it's difficult to place things exactly at the same spot, simply because they are not because of the way Godot handles the positions, depending on if it's a control node or not. The position is coming from the top left, so it can be a bit tricky, but you can simply place it like that. I think you can do it by eyes. I think it's fine like that. You can always change that later. Okay, so we have that. It's looking pretty great right away. The next thing that we need to do is put the ribbon. I'm going to put all of the visual elements first, simply because it's helping me position them and choose the size, and I don't spend time on details like the text and stuff. We can do the text after, because the text is going to take the space that it can. So we need first to make sure that the visuals are the right size. So then we can use a ribbon. So the ribbon doesn't really need to be anchored to this one. So I think we can simply, for example, duplicate the rays, and I will place them not as a child of the anchor. It doesn't have to be a child of the anchor. It doesn't have to share the same position. Okay, so let's change that and let's use the ribbon. All right, the ribbon is huge, so let's make that much smaller. Come on, let's make that much smaller. We are going to resize it to whatever we want, and then we are going to place it. Okay, so maybe a bit bigger. I still need to put a bit of text, so compared to that size, yeah, it's not too bad. I'm going to place it to center again, I think. Yeah, I think I'm going to place it to center again. And then I'm going to move it to wherever I want. I still need to have some text between those two things, so let's place it somewhere around here. And maybe I will need to put my anchor a bit higher, actually. Yeah, I think I need to put my anchor a bit higher, and that right there, because we need to have the buttons in here. In there, we'll have some text, so this is okay, and then we'll have the buttons. So right away, for the buttons, what I can do is instance a new hbox, because I will place multiple buttons, and I can place a button, okay? All right, so at the moment, we don't have anything yet, but don't worry. I'm going to say that the buttons are a certain size, okay? So custom minimum size is what you want to change. I'm still a bit unsure. 96? 96 is not too bad, I think. Okay, so let's duplicate 3 of those buttons. I want maybe a bit more separation between those. Whoops, not 115. 15 maybe? Okay. Let's start with that. I'm gonna rename buttons container. It's more like rewards, but it's okay. And I'm going to use the preset center button, okay? Because realistically, if you're making a UI, this should be in the center. This should stay in the center of the screen. But the buttons, because you are going to use them, should usually they should be at the bottom of the screen. Imagine if this is a mobile game, the fact that the buttons are at the bottom of the screen is even more important because you want them to be easily accessible. So in that case, you would anchor them to the bottom of the screen. That way, if this becomes bigger, as you can see, the buttons are following the screen, which I think is a nice thing to do. Okay, we are going to put them a bit higher. Okay, something like that, probably. Yeah, we still need to have a bit of space. Maybe the ribbon will be a bit lower because the ribbon is more attached to the buttons, in fact. So what I'm thinking is maybe I could actually put the anchor to the bottom and move the ribbon upward, because the ribbon is actually going to spell reward, which is related to the buttons that we have in here, right? This is related to that, so they should be anchored to the same position, because again, if we make that bigger, as you can see, the ribbons are going to follow the buttons, which is much better. Okay, I think we have roughly the shape of what we need, and then what we can do is add some text. Okay, so let's instantiate a label. So what I usually do is the visual layering and the visual order that you see is also roughly the order that I have in the tree. You don't have to do it, of course, in terms of making sure that things are on top of each other if needed. You have to respect that in the tree, of course. But for example, the label, let's say you have reached a new level. For example, this text that I will put at the top of the screen right there. I think you would agree that this text, it doesn't have to be in the tree at the bottom of the tree, but it doesn't have to be at the top neither. Like you can choose. So in my case, I would put the label right there because in the hierarchy, it is higher. And it's just a simple trick that I personally use, because at some point your tree, especially when working with UI, it will become quite big. So you want to know where to find your stuff. So of course you can always click on it, but as you can see, sometimes there's an element that's way bigger and you can't click on what you want. So now I know that right there, my label should be at the top of the screen. It's an easy way to recognize it. It's also good to, for example, put a name that corresponds to what you want to do. Okay, so I think I'm going to put that lower, something like that. All right, that is nice. And I think that's it. Yeah, I want to use a font, so let's create a font. I've downloaded some fonts for that, so I think for this one we can use medium, and I will put the font to something higher, something bigger. You have reached a new level. Okay, this doesn't look too bad. All right. So in the previous video, I think I told you about the grow direction. I was looking for the grow direction, if I remember correctly. In God of War, it has changed a bit. So just a quick tip in here. It's very important. You can see that if you remove part of the text, by default, Godot is not resizing anything. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe because my alignment, is that. But if it grows, let's say it becomes bigger, as you can see, it's growing on both directions. And this is because by default, now, when you use an anchor, Godot is going to assume that you want the grow direction of this object to be related to the anchor. Okay, so what do I mean by that? If you anchor to the center, it probably means, for Godot, it probably means that you want your label or your whatever it is that you use to grow in both directions if it's bigger. Okay, in this case, it makes sense. So now, what if you anchor it to the top left? Well, by default, it's going to grow on the right. So why is it doing that? Well, it's because you don't want your object to grow outside of the screen. But maybe you do. Maybe you actually want to do something special that requires that you have a bit more of an exotic setup. And in this case, with Godot, you can now do it. And I'm going to show you right now. So if you go under Control Layout, you have the anchor presets. And as you can see, it's just a preset, basically. It's to help you out. And what you can do now is you can do custom. And when you do custom, you have access to everything. You have access to the anchor points, anchor offsets, and grow direction. And this, if you remember Godot 3, this is very similar to what we were seeing in Godot 3, but we were seeing that all the time. And I guess what they did in here is they streamlined the process. They made it easier for you to actually use the anchors, because it was a bit confusing that you had both the anchors presets right there and the ability to change them manually. As you can see, you can change everything manually in here. But it can be a bit confusing. It can be a bit confusing when you're not used to it. It's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to select that and put that back. Okay, so just if I go back to custom, now you have also the grow direction. So it's possible, and you can use that. You can actually anchor it to the left. Then you can use custom. That way it keeps the different values that were set up by the preset. And you can change the grow direction. You can go in left, for example, if you want. So now the label grows on the left. In this particular case, it doesn't make sense, but it will make sense in specific use cases. I had to do that in specific use cases. But for most of the time, you can just use the preset and it will act the way you actually want, which is a good thing. So now we move that slightly to the bottom. You have reached a new level. Okay, pretty cool stuff. We need another label. So let's duplicate the title, and I'm going to call it level, because it's the level. I'm going to write level, and we're going to change it. I'm going to put it as a child of the shield, because this is where it should be, and I'm going to anchor it to maybe the top of yeah, maybe we can do that. Maybe we can anchor it to the top of the shield. As you can see, it's pretty big, but don't worry, we're going to do something about it in a few seconds. Let's duplicate it again, and this time we're actually going to put the level number. So I'm going to put 10. 10 is good, and we are going to anchor that to the center. Okay, we need a few things in here. First of all, I'm going to make that bigger. I'm going to make sure that the alignment is center. That way it's going to take the whole size in here. What I will do is I will go into the theme override, font size, and I will change that. Okay, to something like 10. 10 is much better. Then we can change that also. Font size, maybe make that slightly smaller. Level. What do you think? Level 10. Maybe a bit more. 50. Okay, let's say 50. The color actually was different, so maybe we can use a different color. We can use something like that. Level 10 to have the same amount. Okay, I like that. Level 10. You can play around with the values if you want that to be a bit higher, maybe. You can change the size of the level number. Can I change the size? No, I can't, because it's the minimum size that it can take. So I can move it slightly. Okay, level 10. Okay, pretty cool. It looks nice. We can again duplicate this level number, and we are going to use the level up. So level up is, maybe we can use the same anchor again. So let's write, first of all, just to make sure that we know what it is, level up. I'm going to write level up, right, like that. Perfect. And I'm going to move that outside of the shield, but I'm going to move it as a child of the anchor again, simply because we want to anchor ourselves to the bottom of the anchor. So as you can see, it's doing weird stuff when you're anchoring your... So if I put level up, you might assume that anchoring to the bottom is going to put it at the bottom, but it's just that it's anchoring at the bottom of that anchor, which is just a square. The cool thing about using an anchor like that is later on, if you want more spacing, you can actually play around with that. And if I want to reflect the anchor, if I want to reflect what is inside, I can make it the size, roughly the size of the children. And that way, when I place a new thing and I anchor it to the bottom, you can see that it's starting from like more of the real bottom. I don't know if you see what I mean. The size of the anchor node that you created is not necessarily needed. It's just it can be useful for you to place things easier. So in this case, I can make my anchor roughly the same size as the content. That way, later on when I place stuff, it's easier. So now that my level up is anchored to the bottom, I can make it a bit lower. All right, something like that. And I will put the text to something much more smaller because it's way too big in here. So something like that. I don't have the guides in here, but visually I can see that it's roughly the same size as this. You can see you could put the grids, and you can see that it's roughly the same size as this wing in here. Not the outside of the wing, but the inner part of the wing. You can play around with that to your liking. I will just resize that and place it wherever I want. So I place it closer to this, closer to the shield, simply because it's related to that, okay? So this is a bit more about design, but visual hierarchy is super important for the player and for the users to understand what you're doing. So you can actually maybe make that slightly lower just to make sure that the player understands that you have this information, okay? You have reached a new level with the level and the level up text, and then you have something else and something that will actually be interactable. Okay, finally, we can maybe duplicate this text in here again. I'm going to write rewards. I'm going to write rewards in here. Maybe we'll write it in bigger. Okay. Right away, I'm going to make the size smaller. Okay. And what we can do is place it as a child of the ribbon. So this is something that we didn't do yet. I mean, we did it with the shield and with the anchor, but what we can do is maybe use the full rect in here. So it's taking the full rect of the ribbon, and then we can always readjust it to the sizing that we want. You can also just use the anchor center. It depends on what you want the behavior to be. In this case, center might be actually better. Okay, rewards is still way too big, so let's make that smaller, something like that. Okay. I will also change the font pretty quickly. So it's not something that you need to do, but I've used a bunch of fonts, and I don't want all of them to be the same. So the first one is medium, which is perfect. The level number, I think it should be quick load. I think it should be at least semi-bold, yeah, to make it bigger. I like that. This level up, it's very important. I want to be bold. Okay, so I will, again, quick load, and I will use Signicap bold. All right. So now it gives more importance to some things more than others. So this is maybe a bit too small now because of what we just did. Okay, like that. I think it's fine. Maybe make it a bit higher. So now it gives more importance to some things more than the others. I think you would agree. And it looks a bit nicer. You have some things that are attracting your eyes. The 10 and the level ups are really attracting your eye. And level in here is not attracting your eye so much, also with the color, because it's not that important. You understand that it's level 10, but you write it nonetheless, but it's a bit less important. So you make it less important by having a smaller font. Before continuing and animating everything, I think what we can do is work on those buttons right there. If I look at the illustration, it seems that they're not completely squared because they have a tiny label at the bottom of it. So what we can do is select maybe all of them, but we are going to duplicate them in a few seconds. So what we can do is under custom minimum size, we can make maybe 128 in Y. And of course, we can place that correctly. Maybe 128 is too much, to be honest. Doesn't have to be perfect, but still needs to be not too bad. 112, is that updating? Do you want to update Godot? 100, you're still 112 right there. No, because the minimum size I set. Okay, I think this is good. Okay, so we can actually go ahead and recreate one of them. So basically they are rounded with a small outline, and at the bottom there's a label. So this is exactly what we are going to recreate. And for that, usually when I create buttons, you have multiple ways of doing it. One easy way maybe is to use a texture, but another way is to define a button, and the button just is like what is holding what is inside, and inside you put a texture and a label and whatever. So we can do that. So let's go into theme override, style, and I will start with the normal one because this is the one that I will see, and I will use a style box flat. Okay, so for that, I can first of all select a background color. I'm going to select the color that we have in here, and I'm going to make it more darker like that. Should probably be good. Okay, then what I want is to have some corner radius. So I don't know, I will try 12 to see if it's good or not. I think it's not enough. 16 might be better. Let's try that. 16 is way more rounded. I like that. Okay, so now that we have that, we can also change the border. For the border, I'm going to use a blue. I'm not exactly sure what kind of blue. Maybe we can, again, start with this one and make it brighter, okay? And of course, for that, I need to put the border radius. Is one enough? I can try 2. Yeah, let's go with 2. Okay, and let's make that even brighter. I think it's gonna look better. You can play around with the opacity if you want to blend in more with the background. It doesn't really matter in this case. But okay, this looks pretty cool. And now what I want to do is on that button, I'm going to put what will be inside it. So what will be inside it is a texture and another panel. So let's start maybe with the panel. So the panel is going to be at the bottom. So we want to use bottom wide, okay? Bottom wide, and we want to take roughly that amount of space. So don't worry, right now we can totally be clipping what is inside it. It's not a problem. I will do theme override. I will use a panel. I will use a new style box flat. And for the color, I will use the same color as the border. Yeah, like that. Corner radius, bottom right, 16, and bottom left, 16. That way it's going to match. It's going to match what we have with the borders. You can think about the size if you want it to be bigger, smaller. I think it should roughly be a square in here, so maybe something like that is okay. I think I will keep it like that. It's pretty good for me. And what I will do is on this panel, I will add another child, which is going to be a label. I'm going to make it full size, and I'm going to write something in here. So maybe Bob. For now, I'm going to put that at center, and display, and then we can change the text. So under fonts, I'm going to use probably the regular should be good. Yeah, the regular. And font size, I think we're not too bad with something like that. We want it to be seen, but we don't necessarily want to take too much space. How does it look? Yeah, it's not too bad. Okay, so now we have that. And the final component is a texture rect. So in this case, just to let you know, on the buttons, you can see that I'm not using a container. I'm placing things a bit manually. I think it's totally fine because I control the size of the button. I know that the button will always be that size. So this is important to understand that sometimes when doing UI, you want to make sure that you can adapt to resizing. So you use containers, you make sure that you set the right expand and stuff. But sometimes you know the size of your object. In this case, the button will always be that size. So I can place things the way I want. I don't have to think about if it's going to resize or not. Because it's not going to happen. So then I can place my texture rect. Again, in terms of hierarchy, I'm going to place the texture rect before. And I think we can have a... probably from the top wide. Yeah, top wide. And then we set the size. Or we can use center and then we set the size. We'll see. We can try. Fit width, proportional, keep aspect centered. I always use keep aspect centered. Most of the time I use that. And I can use the bomb.png. Okay, so right now we have that. We can select the size. The sizes should be pretty big, I think. And so then we have the choice of using top wide, and we make it bigger, like that, for example, or we use center. In this case, again, it doesn't matter. It matters if you want to resize it differently. As you can see in this case, resizing the button doesn't really make sense. But I think like that, it's pretty fine. We have the illustration and we have the thing. It's pretty cool. Of course, you could rotate it a bit if you want, but whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those buttons right now. And I'm going to duplicate 2 of them. And really quickly, I'm going to place the clover in here. And finally, on the last one, I'm going to place the heart. And in here, I'm going to put clover. I don't even know if we put it in, maybe like that is better, clover. Yeah, we can do that. Not in capitalized. And finally, you can put heart. Maybe a better way to do that is to not capitalize things by default and use the uppercase modifier in the engine. That way, by default, you have in normal way of writing, and you can put uppercase if you need to. Okay, so I think we roughly have what we want. It looks pretty good. And now it's time to animate stuff. Just before that, I'm seeing on my reference that this is a different color, so I can change that. It could be the color of that part. Yes. Oh, okay. Now it fits a bit more with that. Okay, so it looks pretty good. You can change the color of the rays also. They're supposed to be modulated, so we could self-modulate those with, again, maybe the color of the outline like that. And honestly, it looks pretty good, I think. Okay, so before animating everything, I want to do a 2 particle system. So let's do that. Let's add a child node. I'm going to use GPU particles. I'm going to put them right at the top just after the background, because I want them to be in the background, okay? Manually, I'm going to set their position to 1920 divided by 2 and 1080 divided by 2, which is going to put them at the center of the screen, as you can see. Pretty cool in here. We can bump up the amount, 31 probably. I'm going to create a process material really quickly. And what we want is to use texture. And I have rounded rectangles in here for the texture. So as you can see, there's now that. For the time, we can bump up the time quite a lot. 4.5 maybe. Okay, maybe add a bit of randomness right away. So at the moment, it's going at the bottom. It's not really what we want, but we are going to change that. So we don't want any gravity, or if we want gravity, it should be in the opposite direction, actually. It should be going upward, so I'm putting minus 15 in gravity. It's going to take a bit of time to do that. Emission shape, I'm going to change that right away to a box. Those are extents, so you should do 1920 divided by 2 to have them spawn to the whole screen, and 1080 divided by 2. And right now we have them spawning like that. Okay, pretty cool. So what we can do is maybe have an angle. So I'm seeing that they are at 45 degrees in the illustration. Maybe not that. We can actually put them to angle minimum and maximum completely random like that. We could make them move if we want. First things that I should do is make them much smaller, so maybe from 0.05 to like 0.1. 0.1 is way too small. 0.2. So it's a bit of course, you have to like play around with the values, see what fits. You can make them curve though, really quickly. It looks always a bit better when things are animated, so don't hesitate to make them curve in and out of existence. Whoops, I clicked away. And the color, I'm going to ramp it for sure, because it always looks better when you ramp the color. Again, I want to start with maybe completely transparent. I make them slightly less opaque throughout their lifetime. I don't want them to be fully opaque all the time. And finally, at the end, you go back to 0. You don't necessarily have to do it, like at the end, the alpha 0, you don't necessarily have to do it, simply because the scale is doing it for you, right? So in terms of proportions, you can see that we have put a very big emphasis on that, and then the rewards are a bit smaller. So depending on your look, depending on what you want, you might want to change that to have a column of content. So as you can see, if we say that this line right there is the left of the content, depending on the size of this element, you can see that the rest of the content is not taking as much space. So one thing that you could do is take those things and make them slightly smaller to put less emphasis. It depends on how the style that you want. I think it's pretty cool. I like it that way. Finally, we need another GPU particle. Okay, so I'm duplicating this one, and on process particles material, I'm going to make it unique recursive so that it makes everything unique. And I'm going to have an amount, maybe 1. Maybe 1 is okay. The texture, I'm going to use the wing. All right. And we can change a few things right away. CPU particles too. So I'm going to rename that really quickly. Background particles, and then wing particles. All right, it's going to be much better like that. Okay, let's change a few things. I want something much smaller, 1.2 in lifetime probably. I want the emission shape to be a point. I want that to emit from here. The scale, I removed the scale for now. We're going to see I remove the color ramp, and I remove the angle because I don't want the angle to change. I want to spawn right there. Okay. What I want a bit of gravity like that. Maybe a bit more, actually. Maybe a bit more. I want basically that to fly away. So what I can do is bump up the minimum velocity. All right. Maybe a bit less. Maybe a bit less than that. It's quite strong, right? You would agree? Okay. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. You can put a bit of damping. Damping will basically slow down. So as you can see, it's starting strong. Whoops, I went way too far. It's starting strong, and then it's slowing down. Slowing down a bit, yeah. Okay, nice. So then what we want in the direction, we want to go to the right in here, right? X is equal to 1, so it's going to the right. But I don't want any spread. Otherwise, it's going in multiple directions, as you can see. So remove all of the spread, and now it's going only on the right and a bit and a bit up because of the gravity. Having randomness is a bit weird, I think. Having randomness is actually a bit weird. So what we can do is remove all of the randomness, remove the difference in damping, and remove the difference in initial velocity. Like we define the same for minimum and maximum. That way we know what we have. Yeah, I think it looks much better. In this case, it looks much better. Okay, so then what we want is we want to scale. So we probably want to start at like 0.7 and we want to go to, whoops, sorry. Let's not change that. Let's go with the scale maximum of 1.3 maybe. Okay, 1.3. And then we use the scale curve to change that. Okay, scale curve, boom. So we start at something smaller and we grow. Okay, cool. And we can grow a bit slower, right? We can grow a bit slower. I think we're going to bump up the time. That way it's going to look a bit smoother. 1.6. All right. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. We want maybe at the beginning to start a bit faster. Okay. And then what we can do is maybe play around with the colors. We are going to make that much more less opaque throughout the whole thingy. We don't want that to be too opaque. And finally, at the end, we completely remove the opacity. Yeah, like that. Maybe nearly opaque at the beginning, and then it fades out. Yeah? What do you think? Not too bad. Okay, so then we place that. Whoops. We place that correctly. Place that wherever we want. Wing particles, can I select you? Yes. I place it somewhere around here. It's not too bad. It looks roughly what I want. Okay, and then what we can do is duplicate that. In the transform, I'm going to place it manually, I guess, to around the same value. We can just wing particles and just remove a bunch. Minus 500 doesn't have to be perfect. You can calculate what is the mirror version of that if you want. An easy way is probably to scale it -1. This should work. Yeah, but it's not scaling the texture. Oh, it's also scaling that. I don't want 1. So this will not do it. So what we have to do then is go into the particles. The particles, I can then do scale. Can I do minus on the scale? I can't do minus scale. Okay, we can't do minus scale. What I want is to go in the opposite direction, first of all. So let's do make unique recursive on the particles, just to make sure. Gravity minus, this is okay. The initial velocity, we want something like minus 80 to go in the opposite direction. You can do that, or now that I think about it, you can also just change the direction to minus x, and now it's going on the opposite direction. Okay, cool. For the scale, I'm confused that we can't change that. Okay, and we can't change -1. We can't change the texture. Right? Texture. I don't have any way to change, to flip my texture, for example. To just flip it. I feel like I don't have the ability to do that. Drawing, local chords. No. Okay, this seems a bit weird. Okay, so maybe there's a way. I pause very quickly. I just duplicate the wing on the opposite direction and I come back. Give me a second. All right, so this is the reality sometimes of game dev is you try to do something, you think there's a way to do it easily, and actually there's none. Maybe there is a solution, but I just don't know it. So I just duplicated the wing to make it in the opposite direction. Okay, so now we have that. They emit at the same time. If you want, for example, if you want, you can maybe bump up the amount and have like more of them all the time. You can just continue with one if you want. It is completely fine. And now that we have that, I think it's time to animate. And for that, we are going to use the trusty tween system, as always. Just before starting the animation, a simple word on those buttons right there. If you want to make them better, of course, you have to put all of the styles, right? Because at the moment, if I launch this animation, you will see that the buttons, because you have not defined the other styles, they're going to look very weird. So you should define them, but in this case, we don't really care about that. For the animations, I think I want to use a very cool effect, a very cool shader that I've seen recently for this like shield thingy. I would like to make it 3D actually. I want to make it rotate. Fortunately, we can use a shader for that. So let's create a new shader material. You will find in the description the link to the shader. It's not my shader. It's made by Hey, available on Godot shaders. So let's create a new shader. I will put it under shared, I guess, because it can be reused maybe on another project. And I will say fake 3D. Okay, fake 3D. All right, and let's click create. So let me put the code. I will grab it and place it here, and we can remove all of that from here. Okay, so maybe I will have to adapt it. I don't remember if it's made for Godot 4 or not. Redefinition of pi. Okay, so there's now a pi inside of Godot 4, and we need to put that, right? We need to put that in here. Instead of this vertex, we are going to pass a rect size, which is going to be a uniform, because we want to be able to pass the size of the texture. So let's go with uniform vec2, I think we need, yes, rect size, and that's it. And we need to pass a rect size. And tang is an error, it's t actually. I think I remember that. All right, so now we have that. The shader is going to do something a bit weird because our layout transform, we can see the size in here, okay? 582, 496. We can actually paste that in here, and now it goes back to the normal size. But now what is pretty cool is that we can actually make it rotate like that. How cool is that? So if we want, you can remove curl back, and that way you can see the thing rotating like that. Of course, it is only going to affect the shield. It's not affecting what is inside, but I think it's fine because I'm going to hide it. I'm going to hide it temporarily, and we are going to show it after. If you want the shader to affect all of those, what you can do is put a viewport container. You put whatever you want inside of that viewport container, and then you display the content of this viewport container into another texture, and now you can apply the shader to that texture, which is going to apply to what is inside of the viewport. It's just that the setup is a bit more complicated, so I want to avoid it. So my idea right now, just before starting, I want to show you, we will animate the text, we will animate. The first thing is we'll probably animate the rays to go outward, like they will come up. At the same time, we animate the shield, we make it rotate, and we make it scale up, like coming towards the camera. Maybe with a little bounce effect or something to make it a bit more dynamic. When the shield is seen, we animate the wings from the inside, and we start the particles. And finally, we continue. We maybe at the same time animate the score, Then we move on to the reward. The reward is going to be animated like a ribbon. So I'm going to animate from the center and I'm going to stretch it towards the outside. And then we show the buttons. The buttons could, for example, come from the back, from the bottom. Sorry, they could like go up like 1, 2, 3. You can make something even crazier if you want, but I think coming from the bottom is fine. Okay, so let's go with that. I'm going to create a script, and I'm going to do scripts, level up again, and hit create. Okay, I'm going to do a bit of a boring thing right now, but I'm going to take a reference to those wing particles, to the things that I want to animate, basically, because I need to have them in code. Level number. I need a bunch of them. Actually, I can do it faster. I can just click all of them. Reward, I can just do that, right? It's not creating it for me. It is. And then the button container, I don't need to have all of the buttons. I can just do that. And I need to hide in the ribbon. I will hide the reward. So I need to also grab that. Okay, so those are all the things that we are going to animate right there. So now what I want to do is create a tween. I'm creating it here as like a global tween, as a shared tween, but realistically, because you're only going to play that once, you can create it once and forget about it. It's just out of habit I do that, which is not necessarily important in here. Func ready, return void, and I'm going to call the function called animate, and I'm going to create a function called animating here where I'm going to do all of my stuff. Okay, so the first thing is pretty simple. We create a tween. So we do, we take the tween and we do create tween. I'm going to set easing by default, set ease in and out, and set transition cubic. By default, those are the transitions that I want to use. And then I can override them on each tween that I create if I want to. Remember that there's this nice little Godot twinning cheat sheet that you should really have printed and put into your office or beside your computer. You should see it. You should take a look at that because it's very important to know exactly the look of the transition and easing that you want for your animation. Okay, so the first thing we said that we are going to do is animate the title, maybe? You have reached a new level. What do you think? Maybe we can actually display it just after. So let's animate the raise and the shield probably at the same time. So I'm gonna write raise and shield just to make sure. The code, when creating a complex animation with tweening, the code can be quite complex. So be careful about that. Also, quick note in here, I'm using a tweening system, but because the animation will be very static, like you're not going to dynamically change the values, you can totally do that with an animation player if you feel more comfortable with it. I'm doing it with a tweening system because I prefer to use that, and the tweening system comes with nice little transitions by default. It's exactly what you're going to see if you look at the cheat sheet. By default, you can have nice curves and stuff. You don't have to create them yourself. Whereas with the animation player, if you want specific animations, if you want specific lines, you will have to use the Bezier curve. It can be a bit cumbersome. In Godot, it's not incredibly good, I think. So I just like to use a tweening system. Also, I find it much easier to play around with the values and play around with the timings, because all of the timings are through code, so you can make that dynamic later if you want. So yeah, it's just a question of preference, but in this particular case, you can do both and they are identical. Okay, so raise and shield. So let's take the raise and so tween, and I want to tween a property on the object raise. The property is called scale. I think nowadays in Godot 4 it's called scale. It's not called rect scale anymore. Okay, so we want to go to a scale of final value, a scale of 1. So vector2 dot 1, And we want to do that in a certain amount of time. Let's call 0.3 for now. I don't know. The scale, I want to use a different transition. So we can do set transition. I'm looking at the cheat sheet at the moment. Elastic could be cool. So let's use that. Let's use elastic and let's use set ease to out. Okay, let me just show you really quickly how I do it. I think I've shown it to you in the past, but I can show it again. So what I want is I look at those lines, and what I want, because I'm going to scale the thing, I feel like having a nice overshoot like that and then coming back to the value like this line is pretty cool. So I know that it's a transition elastic, and for the easing, it's the orange one, so it's ease out. This is how you do it, basically. All right. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, the raise, I don't know if the raise should do that. So I'm going to duplicate it right away. And for the raise, I'm actually going to keep the default, which is ease in and out and ease cubic. Okay, so let me put that right there. All right, scale vector 1 in 0.3. And roughly at the same time, I think at the same time, I want in parallel the shield to move, and I want to move the scale also. So maybe I want the scale to move a bit slowly, a bit slower, like 0.4. And for the scale, I want to tween elastic and ease out. So it's going to do like, ooh, and it's going to come back. Okay. In parallel to that, I also need to change the material on the shield itself. And we are going to do that. So we can duplicate that line again. And I don't want to have an elastic, I think. Maybe having an elastic is nice. So with that, you really have to try. You really have to try. You never know. So on the shield, what I want is to go on the shield material. And I want to grab the shader param, which is yrot, I guess. Right? Property, shader param, yrot. I think I can do copy property path. So in tweens, I think you have to use it like that. You have to remove the slash and you have to put the 2 dots. Okay? We should try, right? Every time we do something, we should try to give it a look. But right before that, I know that I need to change a few things. Because as you can see, at the moment, if I play around with the scaling, as you can see, it doesn't look very good. Because the pivot offset is not at the center. So what we can do is right there, we can take the size, so 923, and we can divide it by 2. And 862, and we can divide it by 2. And now we have a nice pivot offset from the center. Perfect. We should do the same thing with the shield. It's a bit boring, but we need to do it. We should do 582 divided by 2. And 496 divided by 2. And then we can have that. Okay, perfect. So this is going to scale up. We are animating that, and we are animating the Y rotation. So what we can do is we can animate a full 180 degrees, right? I think it's fine. So we are going to animate it in here. We want to go to 180, the final value. And we need to say from what we want to start. So at the moment, if we launch the animation, set trends on a null value, type mismatch. Okay, so when doing that, I don't know how you access the shader param actually. Maybe using the slash was what we should do. I'm not even sure. It's been a long time. Oh yeah, it did it. Okay, so the problem with Godot is when you launch a scene for the first time, it's a bit slow. So what we can do is right there, when we tween, we can tween an interval, to give us a bit of time. That way the scene can load and we can see the animation. Okay, so you see the problem that we have is that by default, they start at, like, the rays starts at a full scale of 1, and that is visible and stuff. So we need to hide stuff in the beginning. So it's a bit boring, but again, we need to do it. So in the ready function, what you can do is, first of all, on the particles, you can take all of the particles right there, and you can say emitting is it emitting. Do we have the emitting? Yes, is equal to false. You can grab that and do that on all of them. And then what you can do is maybe take all of those in here. Take all of those in here, and you will change level. You will change the modulate. For all of them, we can change the modulate maybe, or we can change the size if we want. So with Twinnings, I will show you in just a second. With Twinnings, you can, if you want, define a starting value. The problem with defining a starting value is that the first time the scene is shown, you will still see the values. What do I mean by that? For example, let's say my rays, I want them to start at 0, okay? So in the code, I say, right there, I say twin property, I twin property the scale of the rays, and I say, I want you to start from, so I put dot from, and I put vector2 dot 0. So it's going to start from 0. The problem is that it's going to do that when we start the animation. So for the first few frames, for the first time, it's going to show the full scale of the rays. So what you need to do is you need to, in the ready function, you need to hide everything. So in the rays, we move only the scale. So let's say that the scale can be vector2 dot 0. We should do the same thing actually for the shield, because we are going to also move the scale. For the material, we don't need anything. The level, so all of the labels, I think the labels can start self-modulate. We can start self-modulate and we can put them at 0. So level number, we can do that. The wings are going to be, we're going to move the scale of the wings. So I can put them to scale of 0. Level up can also be put at self-modulate of 0. The ribbon can put scale to 0. We can put the scale to 0, self-modulate to 0 on the rewards, and self-modulate to 0 on the buttons. So now, when we start, it should be better. Twin property, p-target is null. What is your problem? Twin property in base twin cannot convert one argument from vector2 to object. There's probably a mistake in here. What is it? Twin property shield is 0, 0. What? Oh, I've made a mistake in here. I forgot scale. So basically, I put in the variable shield, I put the vector2.0. So that was the mistake. Okay. So now, whoop, and we have the scaling happening at the same time as the shader is moving. I think the problem with moving the scale at the same time as the shader is that the shader is not going to react very well to that. The shader is not going to react very well to that, so maybe we should not move the scale. Because remember, the shader has to use the size. Maybe we'll have to change that. Also, it's way too fast. It's way too fast. So maybe 1.2. Maybe we do 1.2. And maybe we make the scaling even longer than the rotation. Okay. That is not too bad. As you can see, it's taking its time. It's like coming very strong. Boom. I like that. It's pretty cool, right? It's pretty cool. So at the same time as we have this, we could have particles. Maybe I will not take the time to do it. This is something that you can do it yourself. Otherwise, the video is going to be too long. But you can do that. You can put particles exactly at the moment where the scale is big enough, and you can emit particles that will be very, very cool, I think. Okay, so now that we have that, I think we can just after that we can put the wings, right? So we could tween the I'm gonna do tween property. I'm gonna tween the wings, so wing R and wing L, and I'm going to tween them. So I've said that I'm going to tween their scale, okay? So tween their scale, let me think. I'm trying to think exactly how we want that to happen. And I think what we want... we can tween their scale. Because tweening their scale is pretty cool. Vector2.1, again, 0.9 maybe. I'm going to use the same transition for the scale. I want the scale to go like, yeah, like that. Yeah, that can be cool. Set transition. So elastic in and out. Okay. We do that on the wing R. And at the same time, no, after we are going to do something else. So what I want is I'm duplicating it. I do wing L and I tween the scale. Okay. Parallel. All right. Let's see how it looks. And I'm going to move them at the same time. Okay. Okay. I'm going to move them at the same time. The problem that we have with that is the scaling takes a bit of time. The scaling takes a bit of time, but we can change that. So I'm going to, again, for the wings, I'm going to put them, I'm going to put the pivot offset to 298 divided by 2 and 120 divided by 2. No, sorry. It was 279 divided by 2. All right. And maybe I want to move the scaling. I want to move the pivot offset to somewhere around here, right? We can copy that pivot offset and place it on wing L. And of course, we need to move that closer to here. Okay, not too bad. Not too bad. So the problem that we have right now is that the transition is taking a bit of time. This transition is taking a bit of time. So I think we can simply do something like that. We can run in parallel. Oh no, it's going to wait for the longest tween to do that. Unfortunately, I think it's going to wait for the longest tween. I'm not even sure. Let me try something. So if I tween interval, I tween the interval to whatever I want, something smaller, something like 0.9. I launch that in parallel, and then I wait for my next tweening after the tween interval. I think it can work. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, it has to wait for the tweening. So what we could do in here, because it's going to be complicated to... Yeah, it's going to be complicated to have exactly what we want in here. You see, with the tweening, that can be a problem. When you want to tween lots of things at the same time, and you want to have multiple things having in parallel, but also some things that are waiting for others, it can be a bit complicated to arrange it. Even impossible in some cases, I think. And in this case, I was thinking that this could run in parallel to the previous one, and then we could start this one after this one. But I don't think so, right? What if I do 0.2? It's not going to start right away. Or am I missing something? Yeah, it waits for the longest. It waits for the longest. All of them are running in parallel to the previous one. And so this one will not run until this one. So I can't delay that run, I think. If I'm correct, I can't do that. If I'm correct, I can't do that. So it's not a huge deal. It's not a huge deal. Set parallel, set easy. Yeah, it's not a huge deal. You can accept it. You can say, okay, it's fine for me. It's what I want. Or you can create another tween. It's also something that's possible. We can create another tween. Maybe we can do that, actually. Tween 2. Can create another tween. That way we have more control. I'm pretty sure I was able to do that in the past. I'm pretty sure I managed to do it already. But, you know, it's not a huge deal. So what I want to do is I want to tween the interval right away. I want to tween an interval to not start right away. And then I want to tween the property for the wings. So I wanted to move the wings, so now it should look better. Yeah, because the wings are going to move at the same time. Okay, so, okay, maybe it's possible to do what I wanted to do with only one tween, but you can do it with 2, it's fine. So I think we should wait even more. It's difficult to know the timing in advance. I think we should wait even more. Yeah, okay, that is not too bad. And I think what we can do to make it slightly better is we can also move we can also move those things. We can also move the wings from the inside. Because I don't know if you can see, but basically we can see them scaling. We can see them scaling from here. And they should realistically come from the side, I think. Come from the inside, sorry. So what we can do for that is, in here, we tween the scale, okay? And in parallel, we tween the scale. And we can also tween in parallel. Actually, we will tween everything in parallel. Everything is in parallel. I don't want to do tween elastic in here. I will use the twins is cubic. I will tween that in parallel, and I will tween the position. Okay, so how do you tween the position? Well, let's take the example of the tween that is here. We know the end position, right? We know the end position, which is 403 120, so we can use that. This is what we want to arrive at. So the position is wing r dot position. Okay, it's the position that we have at the beginning. We want to do that in a certain amount of time. I don't know. Do we want to do that in only 0.6? We'll see. And we want to go from something. So what can be that position? Well, we can reuse wing r dot position. Also, sorry, I want to move only the x component. So x, x, x. I want to go from that, but I want to go from that minus something if we come from the right, if we are on the right. So minus maybe 100. We can check that. We can check that. So for example, 403, if I remove 100, it's coming from here. So maybe I can remove even more. I can remove like 150, I think. We can do the same thing, twin in parallel for wing L. We do the same thing, wing L position.x, wing L position.x, but this time plus, because the left one has to come from the center, and to go in the center, you want to add more values, right? You want to add more values. Okay, so we can do that. Let's take a look at how it looks. It looks a bit weird, to be honest. It looks a bit weird because maybe the positioning, we have the scaling happening like that, and we have the positioning. Maybe I should use the same amount of time. Sometimes layering too much is not a good idea. I feel like it doesn't look the way I want. I feel like it doesn't look the way I want. It's too slow. It feels like most of the scaling, most of the tween is happening behind it. Yeah, it looks a bit weird, right? it looks a bit weird. So maybe we should not have that. Maybe we should start the positions first, wing L and wing like that, and then I'm showing you the real understanding of things, right? We start the positioning, and only after that, I mean, we don't have any scale at the beginning, right? So we're not going to see anything. That's the problem. That's the problem. It's because we are in and out, so it's too slow. So if I put something much shorter, what happens? If I put something much shorter, okay, now it looks a bit better because it comes from the side, but it comes much faster. The problem is that I've used is in and out for the default transition, and it's a slow transition, right? Because it ramps up and stuff. I like it that way. It's nearly the same as what we had before, but still. Okay, let's continue on that, guys. Let's continue on that. Let's not. The goal is not to nitpick everything. So these are the wings. Okay. Continuing with the same tweening in here for the raise and shield, I will actually tween the labels inside them. Okay. So the labels are levels and levels number. So let's actually do a tween. I will tween the property, not in parallel, I think, or in parallel. Maybe we can tween in parallel. We'll see how it looks. And what I want to tween is level and level number, right? So level, I want to tween the self-modulate. I think I will do self-modulate A, and I want to go to 100, and I want to do that much slower, 1.8 maybe. Then I want to do level number in here. Level number, I will reuse the self-modulate from here. Self-modulate, we want to go to 1 in even longer. Level number is after, so okay. Tweening like that doesn't make sense. We don't need the transitions like that. So basically, after that, we show the label. All right, let's go. It looks pretty cool. You could do a count up also for that, maybe. You could do a count up, honestly. Should I do a count up? Should I show you a count up? Should I show you a count up? Maybe I should. Okay, count up. It's actually pretty cool, I think. So count up, we are going to do value. It's going to be an int, and we are going to pass a label, which is going to be a label. And basically what we do in here is we simply do label.text is equal to str of that value, okay? And then instead of simply tweening the property self-modulate, which we can do, don't get me wrong, we can do it. But what I want to do is I want to tween a method. So tweening a method is the same thing as tweening a property, but instead of changing the value of a property, you're going to change the value of the parameter that you pass to a method. So in this case, I want to pass count up. I want to go from 0 to 10, and I want to do that because I'm going to do it in parallel. Maybe I don't want to do that in parallel though. Maybe I want to do that after, but then I should not. Then I should not self-modulate that slowly. Or maybe we'll need another tween. And I want to count up in like 1.5 seconds. The problem with that is that it's first going to show, and then it's going to do the count up. So what we can do is the level number in here, we can put the text to, we can put the text to 0. Let's see how it looks. I forgot to pass the label. See, the method countup was not called with enough parameters. I need to pass which label should be counted up. So in this tween method in here, I should be able to bind arguments, and I think I can bind them in here, and I can bind level number. So I'm passing the callable, and I'm binding arguments. The arguments that you bind are going to be passed after the argument that you pass in the tweening method. So the first argument is going to be the value, and then the one you bind is going to be the label. Normally, this is what should happen. So boom, and then we count up. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I feel like maybe this should be slower. This should be faster, sorry. The ease in and out of the level. All right, pretty cool, right? We count up. You can say that it's not useful, you do whatever you want, but in this case, I think it's pretty cool. I like that. You have reached a new level. We will need to animate that, but we also need to animate the ribbon. Just a small mistake I've made. Button container should not be self-modulate, it should be modulate, because we want it to affect the children. We want all of the buttons to be hidden by default, so we should use modulate. Self-modulate only affects you, whereas modulate affects also the children. All right, so we have that. We have the rays, we have the labels, we have the wings. What else should we have? I think when we are done with that animation, we should probably call the particles, right? We should probably call the particles. So when we are done, we should probably do tween callback this time, and we are going to use wing particles. And the callback is emit particle, I think it is. Emit particle, okay? We can do the same thing on win particles 2. Do we have that? Win particles 2. And realistically, when do we want to do that? We want to do that when the wings are on the side. So we want to do it in here, right? When the wings are done, we want to use tween 2, and we want to call emit particles. When the shield and the labels are done, I want to do the same thing, basically. I also want to tween, I think, the background particles. The background particles, they are going to take a bit of time to emit. So background, how are they called? Background particles, I don't have them. I do have them, background particles. All right, so now we launch. Boom. It counts up. I have a problem. What is the problem? Method expected 0 argument, but called with 0. Method expected 0 argument. Emit particle. Oh, you have to pass those arguments? Oh, sorry, it's not emit particle that I want to call. It's restart. You want to call restart. Sorry, of course. Or you can tween the property emitting, but doesn't make really sense. And boom, you have that going. The particles in the background should start much earlier, right? What do you think, right? The tween callback, it should start right at the beginning, in fact. I think it should start right at the beginning because it's going to take some time to actually show. So right at the beginning, we call that, and we have particles showing. All right. And now we have that. Level 10. Okay, cool. We need to animate. Probably we need to make the ray rotate in the background. So what we can do is, I'm wondering if I can loop only a part of it, but otherwise what we can do is say set loops. So now it's going to loop infinitely from here, and we can say tween property. We want to twin the property of raise. We want to twin the property rotation degrees. We want to go to 360. Sorry, I made a mistake in here. We want to go to 360 in, I don't know, how fast? 2 seconds, maybe? We want to do that from 0, I guess. And we want to change the transition and the ease, okay? So let's do that. Set transition. I want transition linear, and I want set ease in and out. I think it's fine because it's linear, so no matter what you do, it's going to do like that, I think. Let's see if this works, first of all. All right, we have that. And we have the rotation that starts, but it's just a bit weird. Oh, it loops everything. I thought it would be looping only what happens after the set loops. Call this method without argument to make the twin run infinitely. I thought it was going to do that. Okay, so maybe we can create another twin. Var twin, I'm going to call it twin ray. Just for that, you can use something else. I'm using twins because that way I show you, because with that I show you basically all of the ways to use twins. But you can totally just do that with an animation or through code. You can say every frame you add a bit of rotation. It's totally fine. So let's do it like that. And I'm going to use the set trans. I'm going to put it on the creation itself of the ray. That way I don't have to say it after. So I'm going to do set twin ray. I'm going to do that twin interval. I can put it after. And I'm basically looping with 0 arguments. So it means looping forever. And I'm looping from 360 to 0 in 2 seconds. It's probably too fast, but let's see. Okay, it's way too fast. It also looks weird. It also looks weird when you do the transition. Is that it? Is that it? When you transition from 360 to 0, it does a weird transition. To me, it should be the same thing. When you look at rays, if you put a rotation of 360, it's slightly not the same thing because my thingy is not perfectly aligned. That's a shame. That's a shame. But maybe it's going to be less visible if it takes way longer to be happening. So it's a small problem, but it's because of my, yeah, okay. It's because of what I've created, right? It's because of the asset that I've created. So you would need to create a better asset. So I'm putting it to 8. It's fine. It's gonna be enough. All right, let's move on. So we have that. We should write level up. I think a level up, you can do a bunch of things. You can animate it. You can animate the count if you want. For example, on the displayed text, you can animate the number of visible ratio. You can animate like that, level up if you want. This is not something that I really enjoy. So I think for the level up, we can do a simple one. We can self-modulate. Okay, so let's duplicate this one. After the labels, we are going to, after that, we are going to move the self-modulate of level up. I'm going to self-modulate, okay, in like 0.4, I think. And at the same time, in parallel to this one, I'm going to twin the property position in Y. I'm going to go to the position in Y that I want, right? Final value is level up dot position dot Y in how many seconds? 0.8 maybe. And from From what? From level up position dot y minus minus what? Minus 150 to go from the top. Okay, so now we should have that. Boom, level up. I mean, counting, then boom, level up. All right, not too bad. 150 is too much. 100 maybe is enough, because also this is pretty slow. 45, you can adjust the different values like that. Right at the same time, you have reached a new level. Should be shown at the very beginning. What do you think? You have reached a new level, should be shown at the very beginning. I don't even have a value for that. So title, I grab the title and I put title to self-modulate is equal to 0, right? And what I do is the thing that I just did right now, the self-modulate, I do it right at the beginning, right there. When I start animating the raise and shield, we can also start that. So let's do all of those things in parallel, right? I do that. I twin interval, I start this, then I twin in parallel the callback, and I do the raise in the same time. And in here, I want to use title. Basically, I want to show the title. That should work. I show the title, boom, you have that. You have reached a new level, maybe it should take a bit longer, actually, 0.8, maybe. Boom, you have reached a new level, it's counting, level up. And then you're going to do the ribbon and stuff, okay? So let's move on to that. We can use the same tween for the ribbon. Let's go for the ribbon, and we are nearly done. Don't worry. So for the ribbon, what I want to do is very simple. I want to animate it from the center. So I need to change the pivot offset to 553 divided by 2 to put it in the middle. And I don't even need to put the Y coordinates. I don't even need to put the Y pivot offset realistically, because I'm only going to animate the X component like that. I'm going to do whoop like that. This is going to look cool, I think. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to use the centrance elastic. This is for sure, just like that. All right. So I want to do ribbon, and we are going to do that after. Don't worry. Can remove the parallel from here. Ribbon, what I want to do is scale of X only. I want to arrive to 1 in a certain amount of time, trans elastic and ease out. And in parallel to that, I want the rewards. I want the rewards label to self-modulate to 1, and in much longer, I think 1.2 maybe. So it's going to twin property after this one. Let's see. All right, we have that. Boom, in counts up, level up. And we don't have the ribbon. We don't have the ribbon? Because I put all of the scale to 0, I think, on the ribbon. Yeah, so let's just do vector scale. Let's just put the scale X on the ribbon, otherwise it's not working. Level, boom, 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 we count, level up, boom, the reward. How cool is that? This little ribbon is super cool, I think. 1 should be enough. Maybe even 0.65. We have the ribbon, and once we have the ribbon, we need to display those buttons. So what I will do is pretty simple. I will show you right away. I will do for child in buttons container, and I will animate those. Actually, you know what I should do? Pass. I don't want to change the whole container. So if you want to make a simple animation, what you can do is animate the whole container. So you can move the container from bottom to this position. You can do that if you want, but I want to animate the different buttons inside it. So what I will do is at the very beginning, instead of modulating the container itself, right? Instead of modulating the container itself, I will modulate all of the children. So I will do child.self-modulate is equal to 0. Okay? So then I go back to here, and what I want to do is pretty simple. I want basically to move them and transition their velocity at the same time. So transition their not their velocity, sorry, their self-modulate. So we tween the property of the child self-modulate. Okay, of course. In 1 second, probably not. Probably like 0.15. It needs to be small. It needs to be small. And at the same time, we tween. So in parallel to that, we tween the position, not rect position. We tween the position y. Okay? Again, we do the same thing. Position y is the position that we have at the moment. Position. And we want to go from, so we want to be position dot y plus how much? We can think about it right there. How much should it be? Like, imagine you change that. So, of course, in here, Godot doesn't let us do that, but we should be able to do it. Probably 200. 200. Okay, so we're going to have that. Perfect. I think I want them to... I want child parallel. What am I doing in here? Sorry, I need to do tween. I need to do tween, not child. Sorry. Then I want to tween... After that, I want to tween an interval of like 0.2 maybe, and it's going to start the next one, and this one is going to be done in parallel. I think this should work. Let's try. Unable to iterate on the object. Sorry. In buttons containers, get children. I'm sorry. I made a mistake in here. Of course, I need to get the children. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And if I launch... Oops, we are seeing them. I know why. Okay. And then boom, boom, boom. Okay, perfect. So we are going to fix the problem. I can just see that I forgot to change the position. So the speed of the transition is super fast on the position. This is awful. So let's go with 0.8. It should be a bit better. And 0.15 in interval should be good. So we don't want to change the self-modulate. We want to change the modulate. Why is that? Again, same thing. If you take a look at the buttons, we are modulating the whole button, and we also want to modulate the children. Otherwise, we are only modulating, if I show you self-modulate, we are only modulating the button, but not what is inside. So we need to use modulate, okay? So we modulate in here, and at the very top in here, we modulate also. Okay, let's start again. And I think this is pretty much done. All right, you have reached a new level. We count up, level up, the ribbon, and boom, boom, boom. Pretty cool. Pretty cool, right? The ribbon takes a second to do that. It's a bit slow. I think we can even animate it pretty much at the same time. And then we can launch our modulate with like the animation 0.7. I don't know if we even need this pause in here. I'm just playing around with the values just to make sure that the values are nice. If it's too slow, it's weird. It's counting up, level up, rewards. Shtum, shtum, shtum. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with the result. I think it looks pretty nice. Of course, you can do even more. You can do a ton of stuff, but as you can see, we can do a lot with twins. It can be very useful to animate, even animate text or animate stuff. I use that a lot in my game Color Space to animate the timing. So basically, you can create your own functions to animate the timing and stuff. This is really cool. It's basically the same thing as we did with the count up in here, right? You create your own function, you pass it a value, and then you do the conversion that you want with the value. One thing that you could also change maybe is because we have a shader on the shield itself, you could make it rotate from left to right slightly during the rest of the animation, the same way there's rotation on the background and the particles right there. I think it can bring a bit more. Also, if you want to work on adding more stuff, you can loop another animation on those. You can make them scale up and down one after the other, for example. You can put particles when the shield is appearing. You can put particles going from on the side. I think it looks cool. And actually, I think I would like to do that really quickly. Sorry, but tween buttons. I feel like I want to create a tween. So I can do tween buttons. Give me a second. It's just I had the idea and it's so cool. So tween buttons. I'm creating another tween. Okay. With in and out and transcubic. I keep that by default. It's cool. I'm creating it now. So it needs to be after. So what we can do to make sure that I can easily do that, I can start buttons loop, right? I can create a function, and in here I will do my tween button. And when that child container tweening is done, so when this tween is done, it can do tween callback, and it can call the start button loop, right? That way, when all of the tweening is done, it starts the loop. And so in here, we can say set loops. It's going to loop forever. And what the loop is, well, we can use that right here. So what we can do, we want to tween every child. So I don't want to tween their modulate. I think I want to make them scale up and down. One after the other. So we can play around with the scale. We can say, whoops, there's a mistake in here. We can say vector2 1.1 maybe. We should not go too far. 1.1 in like 0.4 seconds. The from is not useful. Then we tween again, and this time instead of going to there, we go to 1. Okay, so every child is going to do that. It's going to tween. It's going to do whoop whoop, and then we move on to the next one, and we loop that forever. Okay, so let's see how it looks. I hope it's fine. Broop. All right, level up. Boom, boom, boom. And then our loop starts. I can see there's an error. So there's an error. Can't append a tween that has already started. Ooh, I forgot. Sorry, tween buttons and not tweens. Sorry, guys. I didn't see that. There's an error. Started with no tweener. Tween, bound to level up again. Started with no tweener. Which one? Started with no tweener. Oh, the tween buttons in here. Sorry, the tween buttons should not be created. So this is actually super important. This is super important. Tweens in Godot 4 they start right away. So what you want to do is you want to create the tween when you're going to use it. Otherwise, it starts, but you didn't append any tweeners, right? When you do tween property, it appends a tweener. If you don't do that, then the tween tries to start, but it cannot. So be careful about that. Another solution is to create the tween and stop it immediately. That way you know that it's not going to run. So this time it should work. It counts up, level up, ribbon, rump. Okay, and now, whoop. Okay, one after the other, it's doing that. Okay. Not too bad. Not too bad. So what you can do is you can remove the tween. You can put the tween interval outside of the loop, and that way you can make something a bit smoother. And finally, you can go on the buttons, and all of the buttons you can change their layout. No, sorry, not layout. Transform. And you can change their pivot offset, right? I can't change their pivot offset. I can't change their pivot offset. Godot, let me change their pivot offset, even though they are inside of a container. What do you mean, Godot? And what if I change the button? Where's my button? It's behind. What if I change it here? Can I do that? Can I change the pivot offset right there? Divided by 2, 112 divided by 2, and then I put it back on the container. Will it work? Is it keeping it? I forgot to remove divided by 2. Oh my god. I forgot to divide that by 2. And it's keeping it. Okay, this is a very weird thingy. So as you can see, Godot is not letting me work on the pivot offset. This is something that I don't really like with the new system. The fact that you cannot do what you want. I know that you're not supposed to move something when it's inside of a container, but the reality is that you can actually. The reality is that you can. So please let me do it. Just let me do it. Maybe there's a way, I don't know. Level 0, it counts. Level up the ribbon. And then it does that. Okay, so it seems like it's overriding my pivot offset. So maybe setting it to code whenever you start the animation, maybe that would work. Honestly, it's not a huge deal, right? It's not a huge deal, so it's okay. I will just, again, I'm sorry, but I will just change the values, and I will make a longer pause between that. Anyway, I think this is it. You will find the code on GitHub. You will find that. This video was made possible by the patrons on Patreon. They have access to all of that earlier in advance, and they will also have access to exclusive content. So if you want to support me, if you want to help me making those videos, you can support me on Patreon. It starts at $1. And there's also now a free version on Patreon. You can follow me on Patreon to get updates and stuff, and you don't have to pay. And you will get access, of course, only to what is free on Patreon, but it's also a nice way to follow me if you want. If you want me to talk about a specific subject, whether it is on UI or something else, specific tutorials or subject you want me to talk about, please leave your message in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you later. Bye.